It's a delight to see Reverend Charlotte here. What a time for celebration. It's an amazing ministry team with Rev. Jennifer Hackett and Rev. Charlotte Arsenault. So wonderful. I'm putting my watch here because sometimes I need a hook when I'm sermonizing. I don't want to keep you too long, but let's set an intention. Okay? You with me? Let's set an intention. May this morning enable a shared practice of hope, individually, in your families, in this congregation, in the greater community. There isn't anything more important, in my estimation, than engaging in shared practices of hope right now. As we engage in shared practices of hope, let's remember to name that we're doing something that can feel at times arduous. We are choosing to lead with love. No matter how hurt we are, no matter how unfairly we are treated, no matter our fear, our anxiety, our response to the chaos in the greater world, we are choosing to lead with love. Can I hear that back? We are choosing to lead with love. Can I hear it again? We are choosing to lead with love. I'm an enthusiast, you'll have to bear with me. So we're setting our intention, so let's also name a reality. We are fully human. If you are showing up in this morning with a struggle to be hopeful, I have some good news to share. I don't come with a magic wand, but if you consider something you care deeply about in your moment of hopelessness, something you love, something you cherish, something you hold dear, and just let your heart and mind and spirit rest upon that which you hold so dear, you're going to find little tendrils of hope creeping up and embracing you. In our intention and naming this shared reality, let's also intend to share a practice, and this is going to feel like an aerobic stretch perhaps, or even an ouch, but here in this Unitarian Universalist congregation, of the 200 that I serve here in the southern region, and our 5 regions in total, as I mentioned, 1,025 plus, we are pursuing radical culture change. Did you know we were countercultural? Anybody? Yeah. That's not a surprise, is it? We are pursuing radical culture change in that we seek to mutually create glimpses and moments and sustained experiences of beloved community. Well, that may not feel like culture change to you. Culture change looks like protest. It looks like getting out in the streets, making sure we're showing up at the state capitol. Yes, all of those things are a part of culture change, but it also means that we are called to be co-creators of glimpses, of moments like this very moment where we are creating beloved community, where everyone is treated fairly. No one is treated unfairly due to their identity, where everyone has equal access to resources, where everyone is worthy of love. We are creating this in this moment, these glimpses of beloved community. That's the real culture change we are about in Unitarian Universalism. So let us remember then, seeking a love-informed hope in seeking beloved community. Stay with me, you'll get there. Then we are seeking to engage in spiritual practices. And you may wonder, well, that just doesn't feel like a good fit for me. I bet you all already are engaging in spiritual practices. You're in one this very moment. This is a group shared spiritual practice, worship. Have any of you, in a moment of challenge, taken a moment to just breathe deeply, to just let your heart calm? That is an individual spiritual practice. Perhaps group singing, that is a spiritual practice that will fill you up with joy so you can go back out to the greater world to help bring change. So we are called to actually daily engage in these group and individual spiritual practices. and hopefully institute those in our families as well. Our children and our youth need those life-saving rituals when they cannot think a positive thought. They know, perhaps, that you have a family chalice that you light at your supper table and say, in this moment, we're going to seek peace and embody peace, even if we don't feel like it. That will be a life lesson for them to hold them in times of challenge. So let us seek to open our hearts, minds, and bodies, then, to a shared and collective wisdom and inspiration amongst us in this group spiritual practice. So I mentioned that I'm a member of the Unitarian Universalist Association staff. I serve you and your member congregations here in the southern region. This is my I think it's my 23rd year. I've been around the block for a while, okay? So I'm giving some grounding to who I am. But know that whenever you meet a southern region staffer, and folks on our team, there's still a collective smile when we think back to 2023 and how welcoming this congregation was to a cluster workshop that you held, that we were able to come and meet with you and many of the neighboring congregations. It was a wonderful time here for us. But know that when we show up individually and as a team, we're bringing an internal covenant, okay? Those internal covenants that we bring, elements of which include, and this is something that I'm hoping that you might embody as well, because when you think about covenant and the promise and the pledge that we make to one another, it's actually calling you to actually explore what that means for you, not just ascribe to the covenant that we have as an association of congregations or in this congregation. I'm asking you to consider an internal covenant that will help you respond with love and hope. For in love, and this is the covenantal statement, we will speak truth with integrity. We will seek to speak truth with integrity. We will listen to each other deeply. Not the kind of listening that we often do academically where we're thinking of exactly what we're going to say next, because we've been hardwired to do that. I'm talking about deep listening, where you actually pause your busy brain. Covenantally, we're also calling ourselves to embrace and appreciate diversity, diversity in the broadest sense of all of our differences. So in that spirit of joy, in this internal covenant that I bring today, we're also seeking to celebrate Unitarian Universalism. This is a precious and wonderful faith where we are empowered to experience it with creativity and courage and actually weave it into our lives in ways that will transform you. I get worked up when I say that. Friends, the Unitarian Universalism that we co-create even today is a living tradition. All of these sources, all of these different elements that came in the UU Wonder Box, there isn't one fixed point. We are allowed to bring that which reflects ethical care, that reflects love, that is a source of hope for you, whether that is poetry, whether that is art. This is a wide open faith that invites you to bring all of those visions and all of those sources of inspiration. That is not true of all faith traditions. I bet you already know that. So as we seek to practice in keeping hope in our hearts for these attempts to create beloved community, we must seek and embrace mystery, and that's very unsettling. We want certainty, especially when the greater world is so full of chaos. We want something fixed. We want something that we know for sure. Well, what you know for sure is that when you come to church here on a Sunday morning, you will be welcomed. You know for sure that you can bring your full self. You don't have to check out different elements of who you are at the door when you enter this congregation. That is something also worth celebrating. So we've been naming our intention, we've been naming the covenantal elements that are so essential to help make sure that we remain in the practice of Unitarian Universalist faith. Now, sort of gird your loins for a moment. I'm going to name a little bit more of our current context. You don't hear that very often, gird your loins. But it is rather startling because our path is painfully apparent. We're at a time, a critical turning, a time what we do matters more than perhaps many of us can remember in our lifetime. And it's painful that we gather at a time where fascism is washing over our land. Not a state away, not a city away, but here in Nashville, wherever we are right now in this country, fascism is washing over the land, and it is causing untold suffering. By sharing our hearts and commitments with one another, we then become a responsive community that names that. We take care of ourselves, we don't turn away from it, but what we do when we gather here and practice love, we fill our spiritual cups back up so we can go back out there. Because it can feel like one withdrawal after another, watching the news, responding to the urgency. It can feel so challenging, but hopefully this experience feels like a deposit experience. And by sharing those hearts and commitments with one another, we become then a community of courage and care. You saw how many children and youth were up here this morning. They're depending on us to practice hope, to lean into love, to embody being a community of courage and care. Does this mean you have to be perfect, that you have to have your faith completely figured out? No, it does not. But it means that you bring your best self or the best self that you can imagine to this community, and you come up with the response together. What respite there is in knowing that you don't have to figure this out alone. So this path is before us of responding to the immense challenges here in the greater culture, which may feel at times insurmountable, but let us remember to tend and listen to our hearts, which means you're going to have to put your phone down, you're going to have to turn off your devices, you're going to have to listen carefully to one another. All of these things may feel like a stretch, but it will further your consciousness raising as a Unitarian Universalist, or soon to be, hopefully, Unitarian Universalist. So, a little bit more about us. We have experienced many joys and blessings over the years, and we find these joys and blessings in these communities where we gather together as Unitarian Universalists, also engaged in culture change. For me, that pursuit of culture change over 2 decades is a blessing. I feel like I am in my heart's vocation and ministry to be serving the Unitarian Universalist Association. And I am honored to be in this pulpit on this day in your congregation. As the first Unitarian Universalist Church of Nashville, know that as one of our Southern Region congregations, we actually, now brace yourselves, we pray for you. We do. We lift up all of our congregations by name. And we want you to know that our care is not just out there somewhere, that we are available to you, coaching, consulting, and just listening to your concerns. But a part of what I've been doing here this weekend, as well as after this service, is helping you and your congregation expand your vision of what it means to be a whole community seeking to religiously educate and to experience Unitarian Universalist faith formation. Why is that important? With all the context that I just described, it's never been more important to understand why we are Unitarian Universalists, to understand what it means in our identity, to seek further education, to seek a sense that our children and youth know that they are a critically important and loved part of every one of our communities. It's fascinating to me that many congregations post-pandemic reached a point where they weren't sure if they could reconstitute their faith formation programs. I know this is a shift change in the sermon, but it's important to realize that you made it through a very arduous and tough time. It's important to affirm that you made it through that, and you could perhaps make it through anything, but the sacrifices you made at that time may have been of great concern to you later on when you did come back together face to face and you saw how many families were struggling and how many children perhaps were no longer in your program. It's been a recalibration, a reconstituting time since the pandemic. But we have to make sure that what we do is seek a deep connectedness. Our children need to know that they are an essential part of this shared experience. We must embody loving, multi-generational relationships. That's a part of practicing hope, friends. If we don't know our children's names and our young people's names, then we're demonstrating that they are over there somewhere. They are separate to what we are trying to do. They encounter the same chaos and the same urgency in the greater world. They need to know here that they are a part of a community that doesn't just embrace them like, oh, you're over there. They need to be known, seen, and included. In multi-generational moments, let's remember that the children also need that sense of ritual. I named that in the chalice lighting. They need to have a sense of predictability when they come to worship, that there's something here for them. They need to hear from you that there is a call to love one another, to love all beings, to love oneself, and love our natural world, and that we're called to have a communal response to this, which means that we are always figuring it out. And I'm going to jump forward. Guess what? There are so many pages here, and I realize I'm kind of going on for days. I do this when I sit down for sermons, and I want to make sure that it's cogent and it comes together in a way that sticks with you. I'm hoping you leave today knowing that. So remember, when you set your intention, it helps open up all of your mind, heart, body, and spirit because you have clarity. Because that lack of clarity in the greater culture is what makes you feel fractious. When you're here with one another, you're setting that alignment. And remember that in this time, in this journey as a faith movement, it isn't the quantity of knowledge that will serve us moving forward. Yes, we're called to educate ourselves, but it's not the quantity of knowledge, it's the encounter. It's the depth of relationship. It's the remembering with fondness the stories. Remember to ask the youth maybe 6 months down the road, how was that boat building experience for you? What was that all about? Or perhaps ask the children, well, gosh, do you remember that moment fondly that you did Halloween a certain way or whatever that is? As you invite them to be a part of your journey in this congregation, it will deepen relationships. That's the true measure of how we embody beloved community. So don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting that we stop learning because it is important to keep learning. There's always something to be learned. But what we need to learn right now is how to be a community of care, courage, deeply, deeply rooted in relationship. So I'm going to close. So let's conclude in thinking about some possibilities for new narratives, a new central story in Unitarian Universalism, not just about religious education and faith formation and faith development. And if you want to unpack some of those terms, come to that hour after session and we'll unpack some of that. But know that everything we do when we gather together is faith development. And everything we teach is a glimmer, is a reflection of what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist. And know that your congregation is creating the curriculum. That is a central understanding, but it means that you have to look at things in new and unique ways where you're not measuring perhaps the number of kids in your program or the number here on a Sunday morning. You're looking at where were those moments where we deepened our relationship with one another. So in closing, and I promise this is a reading from my beloved colleague, Reverend Carlton Elliott Smith. All life is a gift, friends. You are a part of a network of Unitarian Universalist congregations, communities, and leaders who care for one another, and you need each other to survive. You are a part of a faith that is committed to peace. You notice I'm raising my fist, committed to liberty and justice for all, especially when inequality and greed seem to be the order of the day. You are a part of a universe with abundant possibilities, including this extraordinary chance to reshape society and culture. But we must focus on our shared humanity rather than our shared commodification of each other's lives. For this reason, in this time of severe uncertainty, we can still claim that life is a gift, and there will be good that will come out of these difficult times together, and we will make it so, and in faith, may it be so. Thank you all.